Hey, what's up guys? Today, I'll show you a horror comedy film, Black Friday. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with a store worker slowly walking around in an Walmart store. He notices tons of people running around his store, and he naturally assumes it to be because of the upcoming Black Friday sale. His assistant reassures him by saying it's normal for people to behave this way during crazy sales. Upon closer inspection, it doesn't seem as if the people outside are looking to shop over there, because they're actually asking for help. However, the worker ignores them and carries on with the store's decorations. In the middle of this process, he gets distracted when a mysterious object breaks through the roof and enters the store. Curious and intrigued, the worker goes to inspect the object, and we can see that it's a slab of alien flesh that is slowly harvesting itself. The worker comes closer to see what's going on, but then the alien flesh shoots into his face its oily liquids, possibly the Indian god lotion. Now we see a couple of store employees looking for the worker, and they eventually bump into his arms, but not in the way they'd like to. The worker has now become a zombie, so the store employees scream like chickens in their chicken voice, after which the scene transitions to a man named Ken with his daughters. He is driving them to their mom's house, but they're not too keen on going there because they want to spend time with Ken. Unfortunately, Ken has to work because it's Thanksgiving Day, and he works at Walmart too. Ken bids his daughters farewell. Afterward, he goes on his way to pick up his co-worker, Chris. Chris gets mocked by his parents for being useless, and then he gets into Ken's car. Both the men complain about their lives, but are suddenly about to get into an accident. After barely avoiding the car crash, the men make their way to their store, where we witness a giant line waiting for their discounted items. Chris and Ken change into their uniforms, and they meet the other workers at the store. Everyone gets busy trying to make the store look presentable, while Ken meets a sexy woman named Babe and starts flirting with her. She returns the favor, especially after Ken offers to take her out for some pancakes, but actually intends for a hormone yoga. However, a grumpy lady named Grumpy doesn't appreciate their horseplay. Later, we see the news warning the residents of the town to stay indoors because of a meteor shower. During this time, Chris meets a worker named Weirdo, who shamelessly eats the corporate cake sent to the store. Now Grumpy calls out Chris for not wearing his clothes properly, and also mentions that Black Friday should be called Green Friday to avoid offending anyone. Now Ken is jump scared by a fat customer who needs to use the bathroom to do his greasy business. He directs him to the bathroom, and then Weirdo goes out for a smoke. He gets locked outside the store and calls out to Chris for help, but he's seemingly attacked and killed by some zombies. Back at the store, the team receives an announcement from their boss, who gives them a boring speech, basically ordering them to work all night long to satisfy the crazy customers outside. Now Ken meets a newbie named M, who wants to mirror him for the night. Luckily, he manages to trick M into leaving him alone and in peace. Meanwhile, the store manager pumps up the people outside, and he lets the savage crowd inside the store so that they can begin the shopping wars. A tense sequence follows as each of the shoppers goes crazy in their quest to buy all the items on sale. All the workers seem to be doing well, apart from Chris, who can't even carry out a single sale. It turns out that there's some disgusting goo on the keyboards, which is why Chris is unable to do his job. Manager tends to a frustrated customer at Chris' counter, and then he shuts down the counter so that the other customers don't waste their time. Chris tries to reason with manager, but is told to go clean the floor, where there seems to be some smelly shit. In the middle of this, Babe spots an old man who looks infected, and he suddenly vanishes from her sight. Ken spots a toy on the floor, so he starts complaining, but the frustrated customer pops up to berate him for being insensitive. She later sits on a seat, but there's an alien slab of flesh underneath her. Now Chris goes to clean up the mess on the floor, but it looks like another slab of alien flesh. Then, he spots a box moving towards him, but it turns out to be a zombie man. Chris panics as the zombie attacks him, so he pulls down a rack of toys for protection. He gets attacked once again by another zombie lady who wants to have a zombie baby with some good-looking man, but he smacks her down without hormone mercy. Chris' muscular co-worker, Bulky, spots this and alerts the others. The customers are told to vacate the store because of Chris becoming violent, and he gets reprimanded by boss and manager over what he's done. Meanwhile, M spots a customer still inside the store, so he asks her to leave. However, she turns out to be a zombie and attacks him. The zombie spits her smelly liquid in M's face, and then Ken comes to the rescue by knocking down the sexy zombie, still without hormone mercy. He quickly takes M to the others and reveals what just happened. Nobody seems to believe him at first, but Babe says that they should just call the police. Boss is against this idea because he just wants to push sales. Manager calls the cops regardless, but the line is busy, so it's of no use. Boss maintains that the store can't shut down because the corporate wants them to make six-figure sales. Babe can't believe his bullshit and reasons that the corporate won't mind if they made it out alive. Boss doesn't agree with her, and then M worries about what's going to happen to him. Now, Grumpy starts going on a rant and insults Chris for attacking the customers. Ken loses his mind and tells Grumpy to shut up. However, M starts to shake uncontrollably, so Ken tries to help him out. M turns into a zombie and attacks Grumpy, ending her grumpy life. A tense sequence follows, but Bulky shows up and smacks Zombie M away. Now the team calls up the other stores for help, but learns that every place is suffering from the zombie apocalypse. Boss still maintains that the team should still be making sales, but then Babe saves him from Grumpy, who has become a grumpy zombie now. The team rushes out of the room and tries to make it out of the store, but they find the place overrun by zombies because the door has been left open. Bulky takes Chris and Manager with him to shut the door, but Ken and Boss strangely need to use the washroom at this time. Elsewhere, Babe and an old lady worker have an awkward discussion because the old lady thinks that Babe and Ken are sharing shameless hormones. Babe ignores her and checks out the CCTV footage showing the rest of the team as well as the zombies. Chris and Manager stray away from Bulky and come close to a zombie. After that, Manager accidentally alerts her. The zombie attacks them, but Bulky comes to the rescue and kills her. Meanwhile, Ken tries to get a hold of his secret stash in the washroom, much to Boss' dismay. However, there seems to be someone else inside with him. Now, Bulky manages to knock out a skinny zombie, and then he shuts the door to the store to avoid any further zombies. Babe notices the zombies doing something weird on the camera, so she goes to check it out. She notices that the zombies are collecting toys from the store and making something with it. Meanwhile, Ken opens the door to the toilet and learns that it's the same fat customer who wanted to use the washroom earlier. He's a zombie now, but still fat, and he fights Ken in a fierce sequence. The zombie fatty dominates the battle using its weight, but Boss comes to the rescue and stabs it, sending it to meet the skinny Jesus. Now, Babe notices the zombies coming together and merging into a singular blob of flesh. Later, the team gathers next to the store's entrance and tries to figure out what to do. Ken loses his patience and decides he'll just take his bonus and leave. Unfortunately, Boss accidentally reveals that there are no holiday bonuses this time. It leads to an extended argument, but then a cop car comes crashing into the store as the cop has been killed by the zombies. The car kills the old lady because of her old age, and then chaos ensues. Chris is attacked by a skinny zombie, so Bulky saves him, but he gets surrounded by more heavy zombies, so he tells Chris to run his skinny body away. Bulky goes on to dominate all the zombies attacking him, but then an alpha zombie appears and takes him down easily. Chris witnesses this and tries to run away, but he bumps into Zombie M. A chase scene follows, and Chris rushes into the team's hiding room, with Zombie M still after his smell. Babe loses her mind and smashes Zombie M's face in a gruesome sequence. With no means of escape and Bulky dead, the team sits down and shares stories of their past. Boss talks about why he joined this job, which was basically only to boss people around despite their status. Babe is upset to hear this and calls Boss a serial killer. However, Boss also reveals that he wasn't invited to a Thanksgiving meal, and this makes Babe have some sympathy for him. She gives everyone some turkey, but Chris continues acting like a baby. Ken tells him to man up, but this leads to an uncomfortable argument between them. Chris taunts Ken about his relationship with his children, and it only gets worse when Babe tells Ken she's never going to date him because he's literally her dad's age. Feeling insulted, Ken figures he should just get out of there. The team learns that they can still make it out of the store by using a truck in the garage, but Boss says that he wants to go down with the ship like a heroic captain. He goes on to give an inspiring speech, but then Zombie M wakes up behind him and scares him like a little girl. Zombie M transforms into an even uglier monster and attacks the team, so Ken tries to fight him. However, Zombie M is much stronger now. He's about to kill Ken. Unfortunately, Manager comes to the rescue, and Zombie M is eventually defeated, but Ken notices that he's been bitten. He asks the team to leave him, despite Chris suggesting that they can cut off his hormone let-go hand. Ken reasons that he's already lost his dignity, so he might as well be locked inside before he transforms. The team escapes, and then Ken waits for his slow, painful death. As the team makes its way to the truck, Babe has a moment with Chris, where she reveals she once allowed a customer to steal from the store so that she could give her kids a nice Christmas. Manager doesn't agree with this decision, but Boss surprisingly says that she made the right choice. Now Ken puts on some skating shoes and realizes that he wasn't actually bitten by a zombie, but rather by Manager. Chris volunteers to go to the truck, and he finds Weirdo, who has now turned into a zombie. Zombie Weirdo walks away for a bit, but comes back with an army of zombies. Chris quickly gets into the truck and tries to drive it, but is unable to do so. Meanwhile, Ken is attacked by the overpowered zombie who had killed Bulky. Chris goes back to the team to tell them about what just happened, but they scold him for being unable to drive the truck. They get attacked by the zombie army, and Babe becomes the first target. But Chris finally does something useful and rips out the zombie's fingers before it can get to her. The overpowered zombie chases after Ken and uses its nose to locate him. But we also notice that the store is going to eventually burn down because of a gas leak. With the stakes running high, the team rushes to the roof, but the giant zombie blob continues to grow. The zombie army follows the team to the roof and is about to break through the latch. Boss finally hits his breaking point and decides to give a speech before he sacrifices himself to the burning zombies to save the team. Manager takes this chance to reveal that he was the one who bit Ken so that he could be left behind to die. Meanwhile, Ken gets kidnapped by the overpowered zombie, who is revealed to be the frustrated customer from earlier. She takes Ken to the zombie blob and she begins to merge with it. Babe gets angry at Manager and starts to beat him up. However, they fall off the roof and we see Ken trying to escape the overpowered zombie. He manages to smack her before he makes his way to safety. Now Chris looks down the roof and spots Manager and Babe, who have landed into a garbage bin. He jumps awkwardly into the bin, and then Babe tells him they should escape before the zombie blob explodes all over the place. However, she wants to leave Manager behind because of the crime he committed earlier with Ken. The zombie blob finally breaks out of the store and is shown to be a combination of all the zombies that have merged with it. Instead of running away, Manager tries to console the zombie blob, but he gets killed. Babe and Chris are out of options, but then Ken magically shows up and reveals he's got a plan. Ken distracts the zombie blob with cringe insults, hoping to insult the zombies to death. Chris figures this is his moment to be a hero. He gets into a forklift and moves towards the zombie blob to provoke it. The zombie blob angrily attacks Chris's forklift and tries to merge with it, thinking that it's a human. However, the dumb blob simply drags the vehicle into its eye, eventually killing it as it falls into the fire. Chris manages to survive the ordeal. After that, he, Ken, and Babe drive away from the scene, probably to get some pancakes. The movie ends with the team driving to safety, but there seem to be other zombie blobs not too far away from them. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.